So some key messages regarding what's gone on overnight. Some of you may have been out last night observing the crews doing the damage assessments in the downtown core. I'm pleased to announce that we did make progress overnight, which is always important to continue to move forward as quickly as we can. We're in a little lull at the moment. Those damage assessment crews are not on the street right at the moment. Most of them have been working 18 to 22 hours. We're giving them a rest break, and we're also bringing in additional staff for additional damage assessment crews. The situation on the river does continue to improve. The flow below Glenmore is at 224 cubic meters per second at 6:45, which is down from the 255 at 2 a.m. We believe the dam will stop overtopping sometime today. The flows on the Bow are also down from yesterday, but stable. Flows at Bears Paw are 1,220 cubic meters per second, up slightly from 1,100 at 2 a.m. due to weather conditions upstream and some increased spillage from the upstream dams. Sorry, I had this in between the two layers of my glasses and everything went blurry. Below the confluence is 1,366 centimeters, or cubic meters per second, down significantly from the peak, but still extremely heavy. As we've said repeatedly in these conferences, our #1 priority remains safety. Despite improvements, we are still in emergency mode. The rivers are still extremely dangerous. We are asking people to stay away from banks which may be unstable. We have been doing remediation work on some of the banks where we're worried about the erosion. We have made it through this point with no serious injuries. Let's keep it that way. Our second priority is getting people back into their homes and returning things to normal as quickly as possible. We began opening communities yesterday afternoon and evening, and will continue that today. In order to facilitate that, we will be changing our process. We'll be announcing all the details on that at 10:30, but we will be looking at a process that is going to allow, as communities become safe and accessible, even though the power's not on and there's still some damage assessments that need to be done in homes that may have experienced some minor flooding, not significant flooding, we will be opening those areas up, and we'll be announcing a process at 10:30 which will allow the residents to self-identify what their issues were so that city crews can start going through areas and dealing with them. Those details will be announced at the next press briefing. We will be starting to release communities as soon as they become available throughout the day, and we'll be distributing brochures later on, which is right here on the screen, which can also be downloaded at calgary.ca, which is what things you need to do when you arrive home after you've had a flood. We've also assessed condition of key critical infrastructure, and we're preparing our short-term and long-term recovery plans to remediate things as necessary. We are addressing a number of ongoing urgent emergency situations. The first is in Douglasdale, MX Substation 32. If you got the press release earlier this morning, you know we had to send the Canadian military down there to do some additional stabilization so we did not lose that critical substation. With the assistance of the Canadian forces, MX has informed us just before this, before we came upstairs, that that situation has been stabilized. In Inglewood, the pressure of the steam flow has resulted in a significant bank erosion near 8th Avenue and 22nd Street Southeast. That situation has also started to stabilize overnight, so we're saying it's stable at this point in time, but the flow on the Bow is still very, very significant, and there's a lot of erosion occurring. Part of the road is gone in that area. We're continuing to haul material and drop fill into the river to stabilize the banks. We'll be gathering information, and we'll be communicating later today to give all Calgarians a clear picture of what they can expect tomorrow. Would once again like to remind you that our drinking water remains safe, and the water conservation numbers that have been, water conservation measures that have been announced on a number of occasions, we're still asking for public cooperation. Cooperation from the public has been excellent in this emergency up to this point in time. We thank Calgarians. Please keep it going. I'll take questions. Rob, can you just have somebody notified downstairs? We'll be down there in about 10 minutes, just so we don't create too much churn when we walk down with a bunch of TV cameras and photographers. And I will take questions now. We have a couple of key issues in downtown. We have a crane down there on one of the construction sites. It's been undermined and is unstable. We have a fairly wide area around that where we have to keep people out of. That's a big issue for us right now. We still have some flooding under some of the underpasses. There's some flooding in downtown. Actually, downtown has dried out quite well yesterday afternoon and last night. We have power issues. We're still dealing with power issues around MX Substation 5, which is a very critical substation, not only to the downtown core, but to a number of communities south of downtown core. Right now, there's still assessment ongoing as to the damage to that substation, and we're waiting for a report from MX as what it's going to take to bring that back up. So right now, I have no idea what the status of that is. So we have a lot of very critical issues still going on in the downtown core. However, the downtown's actually looking fairly good. We do have still the issue, we got a lot of water coming down the Bow River, folks. It hasn't changed. Still a ton of water coming down the Bow River. 3 times what we saw in 2005. We're still flowing pretty much at that rate. There's a lot of bank erosion occurring. The work that was done by the City of Calgary after 2005 in installing berms reduced the significance of the damage in this particular incident, held a lot of water back, and is continuing to hold a lot of water back. But those berms are taking a beating, the banks are taking a beating, and we're seeing a lot of erosion. So I'm not trying to do doom and gloom here, but it's not over yet. We're doing a lot of work. There's a lot of stabilization work going on in those areas right now to make sure we don't have any issues. So I hope I've answered your question, but the kind of a synopsis, big chunk of the downtown core, still without power. Don't know. They may be out without power for days. They might be without power for weeks.
As far as,
That's all right. I have those moments. You know, we're all getting tired, including you guys, by the way, and thank you very much. Anybody else? Yes, there is. Bowness was particularly hard hit. I think the banks are stable at this point in time, but you know, once again, we still have a lot of river flow. That's the Bow River. It's flowing very, very fast. It is chewing at the bank, and it's stable at this point in time. But yes, we do. Bowness was particularly hard hit.
Just to clarify, did you say downtown could be without power for weeks? Possible?
There's a portion of downtown which is serviced by Substation 5. Depending on what MX tells us, what the recovery plan is for Substation 5, they're doing the assessment right now as to whether or not it can be brought back up quickly, or if there's going to be, that the substation is going to require some rebuilding work before it can be brought back up. They will be giving us a time estimate later on today. Right now, I'm saying best case scenario would be days, worst case scenario would be weeks. So, it could be weeks going into months, yes.
for people who work in the Corps, any official warning or advisory to stay away from work?
No official warning. Our hope is for most of the areas with a portion of the east end of downtown. We hope to be able to open those areas up throughout the day to allow business owners to get back in, residents to get back in, people who live in high-rise structures to do assessments as to what they need to do to pump out their buildings, to restore their electricity, so on and so forth. So the east portion, there is some sections of that we probably will not be letting anybody in to do assessments today.
How are you guys holding up?
We're holding up pretty good, but we're getting tired, like everybody else, and I'm sure you are as well. We know this is a taxing event on everybody. We've been pushing our staff very hard. As I said earlier, you weren't in the room, but we have, like, our assessment teams have been out. Some of the people on our assessment teams worked 22 hours yesterday. We have them off getting some rest right now. We're pushing hard. We want to recover as quickly as possible. We want to get people into their homes and into their business as quickly as possible. We want to restore the city as quickly as possible. You'll have an opportunity after this to go out for a tour of the most critically damaged areas. The reality is those critically damaged areas, there are projects you're going to take a look at. There are things that are going to take weeks to months to restore. The most heavily hit areas that are still underwater, and we still have some that are still underwater, are going to require significant rebuild. So this was not an easy incident on the City of Calgary. The City of Calgary took a pretty hard hit. But we're a resilient city. This is a city that bounces back very, very well, and you know, we're all going to pull together and we'll do our part from the municipal side. We're bringing in additional resources above and beyond the municipal resources again this morning. We're bringing in external engineers to do help us with damage assessments because we have task. All of the city engineers are all out. I tried to get one a little while ago, by the way, so I can tell you they're all busy. Every single engineer we could get our hands on in the city of Calgary is out working, doing assessments on infrastructure. And we're calling for more engineers. We're calling a number of companies and trying to get additional engineers in place. We've just asked Edmonton Fire for 100 bodies and equipment to help with the pumping out of structures. There will be, I'm sure, additional requests come in. We're in between two phases right now. We're still dealing with emergency and urgent and emergent issues that are occurring as a result of the ongoing water flows. At the same time, we're trying to establish recovery and reentry. Those two can conflict every once in a while. And we don't have an infinite pool of resources. And we have a pretty fair-sized pool of resources working on this incident. There are literally thousands of people out there on the streets right now working. City employees, contractors. There's thousands of people out there that have been working. They've been working for a couple of days. They're getting tired. We're pushing them hard, and we'll continue to work through this. We're developing better staffing plans because we know the duration of the event is going to be much longer than maybe we originally anticipated.
Thousands of people working, but there's also thousands of people who seem to want to watch and take pictures and be close to the river. Is there anything being done as far as is bylaw coming out and trying to get them away from?
All of our resources, enforcement resources, and enforcement's the last option, by the way. You know what? We're asking people to use good judgment, be safe, and don't create another emergency for us to have to deal with. Stay well back. If you want to take pictures, you know, this is probably an event that people will never witness again in their lifetime. Some people are going to want to record that in various ways. If you want to take pictures, but take them from a safe location. Don't put yourself or anybody else at risk. As far as having people out using enforcement powers and that type of thing, they're all busy. They're all busy. We're using them for other things. We're using them for security of properties in areas that have been evacuated. We're looking at tasking. We're doing the critical tasks first. There's stuff that we're not doing because we've deemed it, and our bar would be higher than it would be during normal operations. We're deeming things to be non-critical now that during normal operations we would probably look at a whole lot differently.
Chief, you're going to mention some of the additional communities going back later in the day. In your estimate, what percentage of total evacuated communities will be back home by the end of Sunday night?
Gary, if I could, can I defer that to the 10:30 briefing with the mayor? Only because, number one, I don't have a good number, and I'd be giving you basically a WAG, a wild ask estimate. I'd just be giving you a WAG right now, and that's all it would be.
I'm told 50%.
I think in that range is probably a reasonable assumption. Once again, as I said before, it's fluid, it's dynamic. We're hoping we don't have to, but you know, if something significant occurs on the banks of the Bow that results in you know, a berming area being undermined and dropping into the river, then all of a sudden we get water flow into a community, we could be back into evacuation mode today. We're still dealing with a very, very dynamic and unstable event.
There are citizens out there that are itching to roll up their sleeves and help out. Is there a role from your perspective for those people?
Yes and no. We're actually putting out a call, and I guess I don't want to jump the gun. We actually have signed somebody to this. So we actually are putting out a call for some assistance in coordinating that. We just don't have, and we've deferred it and deferred it and deferred it, and we've heard it a number of times, and we know there's a lot of people out there itching to help. We have not been able to stop what we're doing and free up a resource to start putting together some kind of a volunteer coordination center where we can gather people, locations where they're at, what they're able to do, what kind of qualifications and skills they have, and match them up with work that needs to be done. So we have people working on that downstairs right now. We set that as one of our priorities first thing this morning when we did our first sit rep downstairs. So we hear you, and it's like, you know, it's like going down a list, but the list gets reprioritized every time something comes up. We've actually been aware of that for a long time and been trying to get to it, but then something more urgent will come up and it gets bumped down the list. So we are actioning that. That has been actioned as of this morning. Hopefully, once again, one of those things we're going to be able to announce later on today.